So I'll repeat what I said before. I'm ready.
Okay. It's Sunday morning, October 19th. We're in the Miller family kitchen in Wilmington, Delaware. And Grandpa Barney Miller is here to
Take a bow.
to give an interview. So I'm just going to fire out some questions and we'll see how he responds. Tell me about your mother and the freedom fighting that she did in Poland. I remember there's a story. I remember there was some kind of a story in
I don't know. I know very little about it, except that I know that she left Poland at a very early age. She was only 17 when she came here, something like that. Because my mother was born in 1887. I know that, and she came here in 1905. So that would make her 10, 13, 18 years old when she came here. She was young, and other than that, I know very little about her activities. She never mentioned much.
Did she ever mention about how she came to this country in the first
I think
place?
her uncle sent for her.
Okay.
She had an uncle, his name was Jaime, and he had 5 sons and 1 daughter. Lived in Harlem.
Okay.
And coincidentally, I used to see one of these sons occasionally. He'd come to visit my cousin Celia. His name was Jack, and he was the second oldest. And the fellow Alan, who was the oldest, we attended his wedding. And at that time, I was a young kid. So we lost track of them after my mother passed away. But I think it must be about, I don't know, let's see. I don't know if we lived here at that time. I'm not sure. Some time ago, I saw the obituary for Alan in the Times. So I went out to Queens Boulevard. That's in Queens in New York. And I went to the wedding. And nobody knew me. And I showed them that I had pictures of Alan and Jack and my mother's uncle Jaime. This was in a picture in the country. My mother's uncle Jaime and my mother. They were in the pictures in the country. So they accepted me, but they didn't remember me. Except the youngest son, Louis. He vaguely remembered that he had a cousin in Brooklyn. You know, not a cousin. Let's see. It was my mother's uncle. So this would be like a grand nephew. You know. Yeah, that's something.
So this all started out in Poland, right? She was from.
Yeah, my mother was from. She was. I don't know what it was at that time, but it's part of Poland now. Yeah, part of Poland now. It's like the state of Vilna. Today it's called Vilnius.
Okay.
It was in that state. They called it a gubernia, which is like equivalent to a state. That was a Polish name. I know she frequently mentioned that name. That's about it. I know nothing about it. She had a big family.
How about your father? Was he from Poland too?
He was Russian, Ukraine.
Okay. He was originally born in Russia.
My mother had a big family.
Yeah.
There were a lot of children. One of her brothers was a teacher of Hebrew.
Okay.
And after World War II, he and his wife and their family went to Porto Alegre, Brazil, with my mother's youngest sister. Her name was Devera. And I used to address letters to them. And I used to address letters to Poland. So that's why I was a little better informed than my brother. And
you mean you did this for your mother when she wrote letters?
Yeah.
I see.
And let's see. One of my mother's brothers lived in a building next to mine. Lived in the same building with Uncle Bill. That's Max. That's Ruthie, my cousin Ruthie's father. lived there. And one day, no, he's dead now, but I would say about maybe 25 years ago, he got a call from a young man saying that he was his nephew. In other words, he was the son or the grandson of somebody who was in Brazil.
Yeah.
And he was here in the United States. He was staying at the time at the Wall of Astoria, the hotel. And he was on his honeymoon. He was going on a trip around the world. And he was coming to visit my Uncle Max, but I heard all of this after the fact. So I don't know what transpired at that time at all. And that's the last I heard of him. But there is family in Porto Alegre, and their name, see, my uncle wanted the name of Bogdano, but I know that my mother's name was Barkanovitz.
Her maiden name.
Yeah, that was her name, because when I apply for a bank account, I have to give my mother's name, so that's the name. I used to address the letters to Poland, Barchanowicz. I used to put Witz, Americanized, but it's CZ in Polish. And they're out there somewhere. There's family out there in Porto Alegre in Brazil, and I think they're in the rubber business, but I'm not sure of that. And so that's about.
So you don't know how many brothers and sisters she had, but it was a large family.
I knew Uncle Max, and then my Uncle Dave, who, by the way, gave me this ring for my bar mitzvah, which I'm still wearing.
Wow.
72 years later. And then there was my Aunt Anna. That was another child. And then there were at least two that went to Brazil. That was the brother, his name was Simon they used to call him. Simon Barchanowicz. And the sister's name was Devera. I think it was D-V or D-W-E-I-E-R-A.
Like Deborah.
E-I or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And she was the youngest, Devera. Now what remained in Poland at the time, I don't know, it might have been other children or other members of the family, but I don't know. I don't know. I have pictures of home.
Your Uncle Joe, he was married to Aunt Anna, but he was not a blood relative.
He was Turkish.
Uncle Joe was Turkish.
Yeah, he was Turkish Jew. Uncle Joe and his sister Mary and Pauline, they were all Turks.
What a great guy he was. I used to really love to go to their house when we used to visit them.
That's right. By the way, I called up my cousin Leon about 6 months ago. That's Joe's son.
Yeah.
I hadn't spoken to him maybe in 20, 25 years. So he told me he's a little disabled now, like most of us are. And although he's younger, and I would say Leon is
mid-60s,
maybe 10 years younger than I am. Leon.
Okay.
And he still lives there, and he's retired, and that's it. Since then I haven't heard from him. I thought he'd reciprocate the call, but he never did. It's Leon. But my Aunt Anna and Uncle Joe, they were some people. They were great.
I remember he used to wiggle his ears for me and do card tricks. I still remember those. I had such a good time when I went over there. I used to really look forward to it.
Oh, they were a lively family. My uncle's sisters of all, when they got together, hellraisers. They were hellraisers. My aunt was very conservative, my Aunt Anna. She had a lovely woman, sick woman.
She was a nice lady. I remember her even now.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you were a kid in Brooklyn. Where did you live?
Let's see. I lived as a youngster going to school. We lived on Saratoga Avenue in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Brownsville, predominantly Jewish area. And from what I know, I didn't speak English till I was 6 years old. I only
What did
spoke
you
Yiddish.
speak? Okay.
And I didn't know that, when Uncle Max was alive. I met him one day. I used to run into him occasionally because we lived in adjacent buildings. And I was walking around with him, and he was already failing. So we used to talk about different subjects and talking about baby carriages and all of it. He said, I'll tell you something. He says, I used to take you around the baby carriage.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, he used to wheel me in the baby carriage. He said, another thing, you didn't speak English till you went to school. You only spoke Yiddish.
How did you get into school? How did you do anything in school?
What do you mean? You go to school. How these Russian kids that live in my neighborhood now, they speak English.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it. There's a family in the building in which I live. They live on the 7th floor. They must be here maybe more than 10 years. I don't know. They don't live here 10 years, but they're probably here about 10, maybe 15 years. They might have learned some English in Russia. And he works. He's a computer man. She works in the office. She's the bookkeeper.
Yeah.
One of the daughters just graduated from college, and the other one is going to college.
Yeah.
And when you talk to these young girls, they have no accent. They speak English as clearly as anybody else.
Yeah.
See? So you learn.
They spent most of their childhood here, probably, and
going to school at an early
sure
age and associating with children who speak the language. So, how does a child learn the language anyhow?
Yeah.
Russian children don't study Russian when they're born, and American children don't study English when they're born. Yeah. It's you hear.
I guess they pick it up pretty fast, though.
They hear it. It's hearing. I was telling Stephen, I says, your son is learning English now. I told him. Well, that's all it is.
Yeah, he's a little student.
Yeah, I hope he is a good student in time.
Yeah.
Looks very bright.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, nothing more.
Okay, so you grew up on Saratoga Avenue?
Yeah.
And then, where on Saratoga Avenue?
Well, it was near between Pitkin and Sutter.
Pitkin and Sutter, okay.
Yeah, we lived in 2 buildings there, 547, and then we moved to 523. I don't remember the exact years, but I do remember 547. I was a youngster, and it was, let's see, I was born in 1912. In 1918, I remember, I was 6 years old, but I remember one thing. There was a family there, they lived there, a woman and 3 sons. And they were all taken in the army, the 3 sons. And their name was Hyman, their last name. That I remember. As a 6-year-old, I remember that. And I remember they're bringing one son home who had been gassed.
Yeah.
The ambulance came in front of the building,
Yeah.
and they took him out. They brought him home. He was gassed.
Yeah. Oh boy. That's what happened to Christy Matheson.
I remember that. And then, I don't know what year we moved over to 523. I don't remember the year. But we lived there till 1931. Then we moved out.
1931.
And I met, did I tell you the story about the senior centers, that I met a woman up there that lived in my building in 523?
No, what a coincidence.
Oh, Jesus.
Did you know her at the time?
Sure. Well, I know her. We were kids.
Yeah. So you knew each other.
This woman's name was Sylvia Forgang.
Yeah.
And that was her name is Sylvia Bessen now, B-E-S-E-N.
Vorgang means preface.
Yeah, Forgang. She had a family of a couple of sisters and brothers, and I've been going to the center on Ocean Parkway for several years. I've been going there at least regularly, twice a week, at least 4 or 5 years. And I knew her, we'd sit around there, have a bunch of people in there, They
Right.
get hundreds of people coming.
But you don't
in,
associate
and people
with-
sit around a table and
Yeah.
they talk, and
Yeah.
all kinds of different subjects
Yeah.
come up. And one day we're sitting there, not too long ago, about 6 months ago, I'm sitting with her and some other people, and we start talking about where I lived as a youngster. You know, the
Yeah.
subject
Yeah.
just drifted, you know, harmlessly, unintentionally. It somehow got to that subject. So she says, I lived in Brownsville. She says, I went to a school, PS 156.
I still remember PS
She says, I lived on
156.
Saratoga Avenue.
Yeah,
Well, it turns out we lived in the same building. This was
that's
a
amazing.
4-story building, 20 families. And she lived in a building, and we started to talk about people that we knew. And I saw one of the guys that she had a crush on. I saw him the other day, Sal Shapiro. I met him.
Did she know? Did she know that he
She
was
always
around?
asking me, "Do you see Sal Shapiro?"
Really?
She still asks me. And I saw him the other day, but I just mentioned to him hello and a couple of small talk words. So I met this woman, and we talk about, you know, who do we know?
Yeah.
She knew everybody
She knew
in the
everyone.
building. I knew everyone,
Really?
and people living in the community and things like that. But it was
Really amazing.
That's a rarity.
Yeah.
We live in the same building. Now let's see. We're going back now.
So this is 1931. You were.
No, this is before 1931.
Okay.
I would say this is about 1925.
So you're about bar mitzvah age then, 13 years
I don't
old.
think I was that old, maybe less. Could have been about 1923.
Yeah.
And she moved out of the building, they moved out of the building, and we stayed on till 1931. But she knew everybody, like all the people who lived on the floor where we lived, and yeah, and I knew it. I didn't remember her brother though. And this Sal Shapiro asked me about her brother Mendel, so I found out that he died. Mendel. But she looks, so she's married, she was married, her husband died, she lives alone. And she comes to the center.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
After all these years,
she's going up to the country with this group. I went with them one time, so she says, why don't you go?
Yeah.
I said, look, you're too dangerous, I told her. Entice me.
Yeah.
A nice looking woman, nice lady, she's quite well off. But, so I don't know what I'm doing. I want to see what's going to be other things. Right now, I'm more concerned with Uncle Bill, more concerned there. I don't know what's going to be.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to make a commitment.
Right.
So
Uncle Bill has prostate cancer,
yeah.
and he's not doing too good now.
Yeah. Well,
We're hoping he'll be with us as
years
long as
ago,
he can.
he
But,
chose not to go for the therapy,
right.
The chemotherapy or surgery or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he made a wise choice. Because a lot of people live on quite a while with the chemo. It's kind of exhausting, that chemo.
Right.
And
Maybe he didn't feel like he'd be able to make it through that. Maybe it's too.
I don't know.
Maybe he felt like it would be too much for him physically, and the
know.
chemo would kill him instead of the prostate cancer.
Aunt Helen's going through a
Yeah.
tough time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we all have to experience these things, but every
It's
time
always
it
out there.
happens, you never.
Yeah.
You
Just
never-
doesn't seem fair.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Nobody goes on forever.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
My day will come too.
All our days will come.
Yeah.
So tell me about your childhood. You're growing up on Saratoga Avenue.
Yeah, nothing
Yeah.
special. We had a bunch of kids and
Yeah.
playing in the streets,
Yeah.
playing in the backyards.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Now this was a hotbed of crime in New York, also, right? This area.
Baloney.
But isn't that where Murder Incorporated?
Yeah, Murder. I used to see them. I used to see
The gangsters.
I used to
Which
see them,
gangsters did you see?
What's his name? The guy that was thrown out of the window. But what's his name? They threw him out of the window. The police threw him out of the window of the Half Moon Hotel.
This was in Coney Island, this hotel.
I forgot.
They had a movie about this
Yeah.
guy with Peter Falk in it.
Yeah, it could be. Let's see. It was. I can't.
Did you ever see Meyer Lansky or any of those guys? No, they never.
No, they didn't come
stepped
to
out.
No.
Yeah. Well, even the mafia was in that area, like in the 50s and
Not over there.
late 50s,
Not over
Pitkin
there.
Avenue.
They were the locals, the local Jewish organization were collecting protection there.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't bother people. I used to go to Livonia Avenue where they used to hang out,
Mm-hmm.
and then take the train to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
On the IRT I used to go. They never bothered people. They didn't bother.
This would be Boys High now.
No, when I went to City College.
Oh, okay.
They didn't bother you.
Okay.
They didn't bother the people. They,
You were pretty far away from Boys High. How did you end up going to Boys High?
Boys, I used to take the trolley car, and I'd get off at New York Avenue and walk down 10 blocks.
So this was, you had to take an exam or something to get in? This was
No.
not a local high school.
Boys High was not the competitive exam.
It was a local...
I just chose to go there, that's all.
You didn't have to go to your local high school? What was a local high school?
No, I could have gone to Thomas Jefferson,
Okay.
or Franklin K. Lane. A lot
Okay.
of fellas went there.
Okay.
And I went to Boys High.
I guess in those days things were more flexible than they are now. Now you have to go where you're supposed to go.
You can go anywhere now.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, so...
I'm just trying to think of his gorilla's name.
forget it.
Yeah.
Think of it after we do this
I
tape.
don't remember.
Okay, so City College. You went there and studied.
A tough trip.
Mm-hmm.
Tough riding going up there every day.
What'd you study?
1 hour up and back. I took education courses and science courses.
Uh-huh.
That's all.
Well, I think you were a chemistry major, right?
Yeah, I took courses in chemistry. I still have all my books
Okay.
at home. Rare metals, everything. All that stuff, yeah.
Must come in handy.
Analysis,
Very
qualitative and quantitative
Yeah.
analysis, advanced
Yeah.
qualitative I took. Rare metals, physical chemistry, biological chemistry I took.
Yeah.
I have all the books. I have all my books. I can start to study again. Yeah, physics.
Uh-huh.
All right, listen. I didn't. The opportunities were small and those,
Yeah, that's
remote.
right. You weren't able to pursue that.
Yeah, you couldn't. You're lucky to get what you could. So.
Okay, so now you graduated and it was the Depression.
Yeah.
This was what year? Like 33?
33.
Right in the middle of the Depression.
Yeah.
And so you took a job with the post office? Is it
Yeah.
right then?
Yeah, I worked there some years.
Okay.
Then I went into education, and that was the end of it.
Okay, so how did you come to meet Mom and where? And
Oh,
when and what are the particulars?
I don't remember. I think it was in my friend Herman Klein, who eventually became a dentist. He went to the University of Tennessee. We had a little gathering. I think it was in his house, or we went to somebody else's house, and we had, just a little gathering, young people, boys and girls.
Uh-huh.
And I met Mom, and the rest is history.
And at this age you were, what, 23, 24?
I was, let me see when that was. I was about 24, maybe 23 or something like that, around that time.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And you got married when you were 25?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Herman Klein. I looked up High Gooderman, I couldn't find him. Leo Goldstein, I tried to call. He was one of my friends. And he lived on Woodside, and I tried to get him. And I an Oriental now. He has his telephone number, so unless
So
he
you
changes
don't know where
it to
he's.
an Oriental,
So you know where he doesn't.
I don't know where he is. Now the only guy that I know out of the whole bunch, and he came in later, not at this time that we're talking about, was Manny Halbert, who owns the Raleigh Hotel where I go.
Okay.
See, and we became friends. Let's see, what year? Yeah, about that time, in the late 1930s. We joined a club. We had a club of young men, and he was in it. And we became friendly. We used to associate. And then I got married, and somebody else, and the war came in 1941, and everybody dispersed, and that was it. We lost track of one another. Nobody knew where anybody was. And then years later I found out that he was up in the mountains.
But he's the only one that you've been able to find to contact out of that group.
Yeah. Still have one telephone number of a guy up in Albany. So I don't know.
Do you think he would remember you?
Oh yeah, he'd remember me, but I don't know if he's still around, who knows.
Yeah.
So everybody dreams. So what happens?
You
As
kinda
you go
drift
on, you
apart.
make new associates.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's right. That's right.
We're gregarious people in New York, and you know, not necessarily in the way of traveling around,
Right.
but we associate with one another. So we have different friends now. Although the different friends now are disappearing too. The only guy left is Jerry.
Yeah.
And who knows what his
He's not
future
doing
is.
too well right now. Yeah.
No good.
Yeah. Well, what about the crowd you ran around with in the 30s? Not the guys, but like Mom's friends and people that you knew there. I understand there were some celebrities among them.
Celebrities?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Entertainers and...
yeah.
Like somehow Danny Kaye was involved in this. And
Who?
Danny Kaye, wasn't he?
No.
No?
No, not Danny Kaye. Not Danny Kaye.
But this guy, what was his name again? Muddle?
Yeah, it's
Mac Robbins?
Mac Robbins,
Yeah.
His real name was, let's see, I can't think of his name.
But he's been in some movies also as a stand-up comic.
He doesn't do anything now. I don't think he does anything now. I don't know anything about him. Klugerman. His real name was Klugerman.
Okay.
Klugerman.
Okay.
His brother was a lawyer. His brother was a lawyer for the Window Cleaners Union. His father was an organizer of the Window Cleaners Union. Louis he became a lawyer when he graduated from Brooklyn Law School. Louis was a very nice guy, a very funny man, but a very nice man. And Muckle was the youngest brother. Then they had a brother in between who was he was a window cleaner, Nat. And the sister Julia was mother's friend, Julia Klugerman. So that's the
I saw something in the Wilmington newspaper about this guy.
Mac Robbins.
His grandson lives in the Wilmington area.
That's possible.
And they had interviewed his grandson about something and how he got interested in whatever he was doing then.
Theatrical.
I don't know.
But this guy used to put on skits for us.
His grandson talked about his grandfather, Mac Robbins, the stand-up comic.
Yeah. When he was a kid, we used to come up to, I'd go with Mother. We'd visit Julia, her mother was there, and whoever else, I don't remember. And he used to have a skit he was rehearsing. He must have been about 16 maybe at that time, because he was younger than him. He was the youngest of the children, and he must have been maybe at the very most 18. He could have been as young as 16. And he used to sit us down in the living room, and he'd rehearse for us, He'd rehearse a skit for us that he was doing. Yeah. I remember one time we were in the mountains, And sometimes I didn't care to go into the nightclub at night. And so we were there with Aunt Rosie, and Mother and Aunt Rosie went into the nightclub, and the show was on, and then I figured I'll walk in. There wasn't much to do, so I walk inside, and I look on the stage, Martel! He says, I got a friend in the audience.
Of course he remembered you, yeah, I'm sure he remembered you.
Yeah, then I went backstage with Mom and Aunt Rosie. We spoke with him. Nice guy, very nice fellow.
So let's see, your mom died when I was 2.
My mother died in 1944.
Right.
So many
So
years
I never
ago.
really got to know her. I remember that she used to take care of me. I remember her holding me.
Yeah, I have a picture. She died in 1944.
Yeah.
March 18th, the day after St. Patrick's Day. I took her to the hospital on St. Patrick's Day, and she died the next day.
What were the circumstances? What,
She had
was a heart attack? Oh, okay.
trouble.
She had heart trouble before?
I don't know. She might have had. People were not as health conscious or
Yeah.
doctor prone as they are today.
Yeah.
But in all probability, she had a heart condition, and that was the end. So 1944.
So she was like 58 or something.
She was
She's
50.
She's a young woman.
44. She was 57 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Well, listen, how want to go?
No, I just have
enough.
just a few more questions, okay? My grandparents on mom's side.
Yeah.
What about her father? See, I was
Father?
10 I was 10 years old when
He died?
He died, but I don't remember that much about him because the last few years I didn't get to see much of him because he was sick.
Yeah.
And I know that he was
He was a
real
very,
good
very
guy.
good man, very nice man, and a good sense of humor and everything, family oriented, and hardworking, good provider for his family, and that's it. He went the way of all flesh.
Now he owned that grocery store on Ralph Avenue,
Yeah.
right? Ralph Avenue, and then he retired at about 60 or something, or
I don't know.
there was some competition that came across the street, and they
was
just
no competition. He had customers there that he serviced in a way that a competitor
couldn't do.
couldn't. You know.
Yeah, he had a real
chain
close
store.
relationship with his customers.
Very personal relationship. So he survived without trouble, but then he had to give it up. The work was impossible. He couldn't do it, so that's it.
Yeah, I remember I actually remember being in that store. It had a wooden floor, was that right, if I remember correctly? It was kind of like a creaky wooden floor.
Yeah.
I just remember a little bit about it, not that much. But after I was about 5 years old, maybe he didn't have the store anymore.
See, I don't know what year he died in.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
well, I was 10 when he died.
You were 10?
Yeah.
So that would be 1962.
1952.
1952.
Right. 1952.
1952.
Yeah, I remember being up there in their apartment on Ralph Avenue, which probably was right above the store. It was like in the corner of the building, looking out the corner.
3 flights up.
And I remember Grandma, she was trying to study for a naturalization test or something, and I remember trying to teach her how to read and write in English. Me. I mean, like I was helping her with
I
it.
don't remember that. Yeah.
Well, she was a pretty nice lady, but she was the matriarch of the family, really. She kind of ran things.
She was a shy person, you know.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so. She felt very insecure in company because evidently she hadn't had much education.
Okay.
And
And this was something that made her uncomfortable.
Yeah, it made her feel very uncomfortable. So That's it.
Okay, I guess this is the end of the interview. Any parting words of wisdom before we totally conclude?
Words of wisdom? Keep going on as you are right now, and you'll be all right.
Okay.
My words of wisdom. And if I can do that, I'd be more than satisfied.
Okay.
Every day is a battle, Chester. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it must be very tough for you right now.
Every day.
Yeah.
Although you manage.
Okay.
Man is a very, very flexible animal.
Okay.
And you learn to get along.
Okay. Any words for your great-grandchildren who are going to see this someday, or?
All right. Carry on the traditions. That's all.
Okay.
With improvements.
Okay, we're going to fade out now.
All right. All right, Dolly.